A very good morning to everybody, and once again, welcome to Asia. I believe for some of you, it's the first time. And look at you, wonderful people, bustling with energy. And I think you should be exactly the same when AMEC brings this summit to India, which is where I come from. Few stats about India. We are 1.3 billion people. That's what it says in a study that was done, or rather the census that was done in 2015, and I do need to keep this paper with me because I don't want to mix them up. We have 1.12 billion telecom subscribers. We have 82,000 newspapers. We have over 857 television channels. Our Prime Minister's Twitter handle has 29.9 million followers. And interestingly, while we are talking about digital, we are talking about how digital is taking over the world. In the last decade, print media in India has grown by 4.87%. And add to that, there are 22 official languages in India. So this is the land I come from, and this is the confusion that we deal with on a day-to-day basis as communicators. So disruption is a part of our life. If you are able to get your head around the stats that I just shared with you, disruptive communication is a part of our life to be able to land our messages correctly. But since this is also the theme of our conference, I have to start with a disruption. Can any of you tell me what is written on the slide here? Okay. This is exactly this slide in a different language. A language that is spoken by 2 million people in the world today. A language that was created to bridge a gap between communicators and bridge a gap between people speaking different kinds of languages. So let me just give you another flavor of that language.
Hallå, estás mi demandis min posti all'onga neren contonin por forgesse che una ina leu dire il tempo nin curazza sies diel mi pluma alzanas hallå chuvia.
Did you recognize the song? You recognized it because you had a context. This is Hello by Adele in a language which is spoken by 2 million people in the world, Esperanto. But it made us uncomfortable because we don't know the language that was created to bridge a gap, to establish a connection, to tell a story. But before I go into anything else, I just want to spend some time talking to you about my life. I started my career many years ago as a journalist. So if you look at those icons, that is my journey. From a typewriter, I don't know how many of you have used those typewriters. I started my career typing. Press releases, articles in that typewriter. The day I moved to an electronic typewriter, it was complete liberation. And imagine my joy when I got a desktop. You could actually delete things. You could actually edit them. And from them, you could actually take your work home if you wanted to spend some time with your family, which may or may not be the great thing to take back home, but it allowed you flexibility. And today, we all have our work in our pockets. So this is the time print ruled. Then came television, and followed by lots of icons, lots of things that are a part of the World Wide Web and a part of our lives. So we measured. As communicators, no matter who you are and where you work, you measure. So we measured column CC. We measured the number of articles. We measured the stature of the journalist. Is the right journalist writing for us, or is it somebody else who doesn't have the credibility writing for us? Who is it who's in bed with us? But suddenly, public relations changed. Number of publics have gone up. Engagements have increased, and we are expected to be always on. So getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning for a call with the US, and finishing my day with a call with UK at about 9 o'clock in the night is a part and parcel of most of our lives. So life, when you used to go into work at 9 o'clock in the morning and finished by 5, is no longer happening. So what are we measuring today? Since we are talking about measurement, now what are we measuring? Earlier, it was earned. Now we are measuring earned, paid, owned. You know, when I started my career, owned asset was just that wall in the cafeteria where you could put up posters, where you could communicate with your employees. You didn't have any other owned asset. And now we have all sorts of digital assets that we need to be a part of, that we need to listen to, that we need to have a conversation in. So what are we measuring? Just to come back to it, are we measuring the 3 inches, or the 3 kilos, or the 3,000 impressions? Here I must pause to tell you an anecdote. The 3 kilos must be something that must be scaring all of you. It is one of the facepalm moment on Twitter, but it is a very important part of the life from this country that I come from, because there are people who are still expecting you to bring big, thick dossiers, which weigh in kilos actually, and establish the fact that your public relations or communication outreach was a success. So I'm still baffled, what are we still measuring? There are these challenges. No common currency of measurement for PR, which we all know. I think it is even more baffling for us in the part of the world that we are in. Because there are these big companies, the big agencies, big consultancies, who are actually trying to drive a different narrative. And then there are these smaller boutique mom and pop shops who are completely looking at it from a different perspective. Today's challenge is also the measurement for the practitioner versus measurement for the C-suite. Who are the people who are actually judging the efficacy of the work that we do? So functionally, as a head of the function, I know what is important for me to measure. But when I take that conversation into the leadership team, it is a completely different set of measurements that we are expected to do. And AVE, as we have all agreed, is no longer a representative measure, but that's the easiest ROI, and that's the ask that is coming very frequently to us. One more thing that I haven't put in here is we are also being asked to forecast. Basis your last year's activity, your last year's outreach, can you not forecast how much you are going to get this year? So that's another thing that we need to think about. So we need different kinds of ways to measure our work. The questions we are asked: is it generating brand love? Does it help in the permission to operate? Is this helping in uptake, footfall, or sampling? Is this driving the share of recommendation? What is the business impact of the work you do? The questions I haven't added here: is it retaining our employees? Is it going to attract new investment? Is it going to get our engagement scores up? Is it the right thing for the civic community, the civic society? So the questions on the other side of the table that we sit on, are very different and very varied from the time when we started. So this is a typical measurement dashboard that we follow. And of course, I have lots of people here sitting who probably have better dashboards and much more detailed ones. But typically, this is how we have started measuring our work. So there is, of course, the total coverage by media type. There is the sentiment. There is the key message cut through, the key media coverage, the reach, and the total piece of media coverage. And this is where we propose to move. So PR is actually becoming part of the market modeling mix. So you have television, TV, radio, you have digital, which is social and iVideo. The expert marketing, the line of work that I'm in, the expert marketing is very important, which is basically the way your expert team is detailing to the various healthcare professionals. PR, of course, is what we do. Sampling and activation, which means how is your direct contact programs with your consumers, how is that getting an input? Price, which is a very interesting one, which is basically not just the price of your brand, but the price of your competition, price that is existing in the market, the average price, as well as the macroeconomic and the microeconomic inputs that can go into it. And of course, promotions is the usual sales promotion that we talk about. So this is where we are going to hopefully land sometime soon. In addition to this, we also do the reputation study. So there is one stream of work that continues, which is a part of the business outcome. The other stream of work that happens, which is around the reputation outcome. So therefore, the global studies which happen across all stakeholders, where we measure our key trends, where we kind of find out what exactly is being spoken about us across the investors, the media, the consumers, the analysts, etc. But where do we go from here? So currently we are doing these two streams, but where do we go from here? Going back to Esperanto, having a language does not ensure its adoption. Relatability helps in generating some kind of curiosity, and curiosity can lead to trial. Esperanto, for some people, in fact, a dear friend of mine just asked me the question of what was Esperanto, and I just told her, you have to wait for another 15 minutes till I start speaking. So it is one of the most widely spoken constructed language in the world. I didn't know that till the time I started doing a little bit of research around this. But why does it still remain so thin in the ground? So the point I'm trying to make is that we might have some excellent measurement tools, but the uptake of that and the efficacy of that and the relatability of that within the systems that we operate in is still thin. So for Esperanto, it wasn't practical. It was nobody's mother tongue. It was too disruptive. And, well, I'm not a linguist. I'm already dealing with some stuff. I don't want to add something more. So basically, their authors did not create legends around it. There was no culture or context around it. And because it was not marketed well. I think to some degree, we are all marketeers here. We are all trying to sell ourselves, and believe you me, being in the communication department of a corporate, the amount of marketing we need to do for our function is a continuous task. So what can we learn from this? The tool has to be looked at in different ways. For instance, it has different meaning for the evangelists, from the practitioners, and then to the end consumers. So the tool has to be very simple, neutral. It has to be practical. It has to have easy access. Here, I just pause and give you a little bit of an anecdote, again, a part of a conversation with a friend early this morning. When I was a journalist many years ago, and we were told to write 500 words, I actually sat and counted them, physically, manually, because there was no word count. Now, when we are told, write 1,500 words for maybe the annual report, it's so easy, click of a button, and I know my word count. The reason I make this point, ladies and gentlemen, is because the user-friendliness of that word count has liberated me from a huge task and has made me deliver on the requests that are made to me. So at one level, it needs to be simple, easy, and therefore it'll generate a lot more usage. The other thing is that how are we evangelizing it to the practitioners? Are we embedding these tools in the curriculum? I heard a lot of conversations earlier around how awards need to have no AVE. I think time has come for us to say what it should have. Let us put on the table saying an award to earn its stature should have X and Y and Z. And then let's see how the entire industry rallies behind that and gets it on the table. Sampling is another very important thing, which we need to kind of put on the table. For instance, when I am making a presentation on my work alongside the work of my colleagues from the marketing and the brand teams, the kind of statistics that they put up are so easy for people to understand. And my gut feel is that everybody in that room who have had the privilege of coming from some business management schools have been made familiar with these assessments fairly early in their lives. Whereas what we kind of put on the table is still a little new. So how can we evangelize and how can we drive that conversation? So I think it needs to be made more tangible. It needs to be made in easier ways of measuring. And it needs to be accepted mode for the industry. So as I said, going back to my earlier point, that while a lot of people are talking about it, and we are conscious of it, but there are a lot of people who don't even have a clue that the world has moved beyond AVE. And when you are looking at it from the C-suite perspective, you are getting a random set of things to look at, and then you make your own conclusions and your own judgment. This is pretty much the last slide, and just wanted to leave a thought behind, that it doesn't matter how accurate your measurements are if you are measuring things that don't really matter. We need to be able to understand what is the thing that matters to our colleagues, to the C-suite, to our line managers, to the businesses that we support. Because at the end of the day, communication as a function is probably gaining grounds much faster, and it is getting very closely embedded with the business requirement of any function. Esperanto also means one who hopes. So I'm hopeful that the collective mind in this room will be able to come up with solutions that will be easy for us to deploy, easy for us to use, and easy for us to help our stakeholders from our perspective, what is the work that we do. So happy to take questions.
Thank you, Deepa. And immediately a hand goes up. Microphone here, please.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting presentation, very encouraging to hear your ambitions around the market mix modeling. And I was wondering if you could just expand on that a little bit in terms of, I think, possibly a couple of challenges that might come that way. One, in terms of how you align the different parts of communications and marketing on how you kind of feed information into that and what you want to get out of it. And secondly, more specifically on earned media. I noticed with your dashboard, there's a whole series of metrics and how you would prioritize which of those metrics would then potentially go into that model.
So market mix modeling is actually a global project, which is being worked on alongside the insight stream, the analytical team, the marketing, and the business itself. So yes, getting inputs, as you said, is one of the critical challenges. So we are currently working together to figure out what kind of inputs would be necessary and would be useful, because then we have many inputs to share. So I think that is one thing that we are still working on. And this is very important for us as communication function to be a part of. Earlier, we were not a part of this. So we kind of pushed our way in to be able to understand how we are also making a business to the performance or the business of the organization. So I think to that extent, it's a very important thing to be a part of. It is yet to be launched. So it is currently, we are in the process of gathering inputs and informations to see how best we can cull out some really relatable output from that. What I believe is the current challenge from the communication perspective is that it is not being able to derive at a qualitative output. So currently, the inputs that are going in are giving me quantitative outputs, whereas qualitative ones, like for instance, the key messages, one story in a critical newspaper as opposed to 20 stories in non-critical ones, how is that going to be rated? So those are the ones we are currently working towards to fine-tune with the rest of the team, because that's, I think, once we've cracked that, we will be home. Sorry, you had a second question about which kind of matrices go in. All of those go in as of now. Again, as I said, we are still at the pilot stage to see what is the outcome that we are getting. If we need to drop some of those, if we need to add extra stuff. So we are in that stage, but I thought it would be an interesting thing to share it with you to get also your inputs on how we can probably, work that out even better.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm looking for another question from the room. Okay, I'll go with one. You have responsibility for a very large area.
Yeah.
Is the level of understanding and proficiency amongst your communications team, does that sort of get in the way of the changes you want to make? Or is it something you have to work to bring everyone up?
Well, I think the way communication is measured in all the regions, even outside of my area of direct remit, is very different, because the challenges in our market are very different. For instance, some of the coverage that are very easy to get in markets like Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, would probably be actually impossible in India, because the media in itself is very different, and they are expecting a different kind of thing from you. So I think we are all very aligned that we want to change. We are very aligned that we want to drive this within the organization and have the stakeholders on our side. But as I said, I'm not sure whether it's going to be the same everywhere, because again, within the region, India is very different. North of India is different from south, east is different from west. And then when you go down to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and Myanmar, and they are again very different. Yeah. So I don't know whether there will be one size fit all, but I think collectively we all believe that we need to move the needle, which is quite refreshing.
Yeah. So I'm looking for a final question from the hall, if there is one. On the front row, Richard.
Hi, Deepa. Great talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to pick up on that, I mean, it's such a big organization that you work for. Is there not someone trying to drive a consistent global approach to measurement? I appreciate there's differences in markets in terms of the media and how you might source the content and that kind of stuff. But is there not someone looking to get a holistic picture of the globe and to make the measurement consistent throughout all of the markets and all of the regions? Or is it broken into key regions and then you're allowed to do your own thing? Give us some insights into how big organizations like yours structure themselves, and also perhaps your view on whether you're doing it right or whether perhaps something could be changed.
So I just would like to take you back to this slide. We do apply this measurement dashboard across all our regions. We are expected to, and we do that, and this is where we are planning to move into across the globe. So, but then again, as I said, there are two different streams. One is the performance, and the other is the reputation. So when you're looking at the categories and how they are working and how they are adding value, then the market modeling mix comes into play. But when you're looking at the corporate reputation, which has over and above the kind of outreach that we do for the categories, then we have the reputation study, the global reputation studies that come into play. So yes, there are different things that are happening globally. It's just that we are in the process of moving from one to the other.
Yeah. Okay. Our chance to say thank you. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.